I still drive past it. I don't plan to. That's the thing I want to say first. I never plan to. I'll be on my way to the pharmacy or coming back from my sister's place on the other side of town, and somehow I end up on Weller Street. Somehow my hands just turn the wheel. I'm 78 years old. My name is Gerald Marsh, and I have driven past that house more times than I have visited my own children. I don't say that to be dramatic. I say it because it's true, and because it's 78, I've run out of reasons to say things that aren't. The house is a pale yellow now. It used to be white. Someone painted it, maybe 15 years ago, maybe 20. I noticed the change the way you notice a scar healing on someone else's face. It's different, but the shape of the wound is still there if you know where to look. I know where to look. I've known that house since I was 19 years old. I knew the way the front step creaked on the left side. I knew the smell of the hallway in winter, something like cedar and something like old wool. I knew which window on the second floor stayed lit the latest at night. Her name was Miriam. We were together for almost 4 years. From the autumn I was 22 until the winter I turned 26. And I want to be careful here because this isn't a love story. Or maybe it is, but not the kind anyone wants to hear. Not the kind with a clean ending or a lesson wrapped inside it. I left. That's the simple version. I left because I was 26 and I thought leaving was something you could undo. I thought most things were something you could undo. I had an opportunity, a job in another city, a real one, the kind my father would have been proud of, and I needed that then more than I understood. My father wasn't a man who said much, but his silences had weight to them. I spent most of my 20s trying to fill those silences with the right accomplishments. So I took the job. I told Miriam we'd figure it out. I told her in the way people say things they already know aren't true but need to say out loud anyway, just to get through the moment. She didn't argue with me. That was Miriam. She had a way of going very still when something hurt her. Not cold, not angry, just still, like a room after someone has just left it. I drove away in October. I want to tell you about a specific evening, not because it was the most important one, but because it's the one that stayed. It was maybe 3 months before I left, late summer. We were sitting on the back porch of that house. Her parents were away for the weekend, and we had this old radio playing something neither of us were really listening to. The sky had gone that deep blue it gets right before full dark, and Miriam leaned her head against my shoulder and said quietly, almost to herself, she said, "I think this is enough. This, right here. Don't you think this is enough?" And I said yes, but what I was thinking, and I remember this clearly, I remember it the way you remember the moment you realize you've made a wrong turn. What I was thinking was, not yet. Not yet, it isn't. I didn't say that. I said yes, and I meant it in a way. I did love her. I did love that porch and that blue sky and the way her voice got quiet when she felt safe. But there was something in me that was already turned toward the road, already counting. I didn't know then that she was asking me something more than a question about that evening. I understand now what she was asking. I got the job. I moved. We tried for about 7 months, the phone calls and the visits every few weeks, and then the calls got shorter, and then the visits stopped, and then one afternoon she called me, and her voice had that stillness in it again, and she said she thought we should stop. I agreed too quickly. I know that now. I agreed the way someone agrees when they've been waiting to be given permission. I told myself I was being mature, honest, practical. I was 26. I didn't know the difference between letting something go and abandoning it. I married a woman named Patricia when I was 31. We had 2 children, a son and a daughter, and we had 34 years together before she passed. And I want to be honest with you. I loved Patricia, genuinely. I'm not sitting here telling you she was a consolation or a mistake. She wasn't either of those things. But there is a version of grief that doesn't announce itself, that doesn't arrive with tears or with the sharp feeling of loss. It's quieter than that. It lives somewhere underneath the ordinary days. I can't tell you exactly when I first drove past the house again. Sometime in my late 30s, I think. I was back in town for a work matter, and I found myself on Weller Street, and I slowed down without deciding to. The pale yellow house, the step I knew, the second-floor window. I didn't stop. I told myself I was just passing through. I never reached out to her. I want to be clear about that. All those years of driving past, and I never once knocked on that door, never wrote, never asked anyone who might have known us both how she was, what she'd become. I told myself it would have been wrong, that she had moved on, that it wasn't my place anymore. But I think the truth is simpler and less flattering than that. I was afraid of what she might say, and I was afraid of what she might not say. Those are different fears, and I held them both. It was my son, Thomas, who told me about her. We were having dinner at his house. This would have been maybe 10 years ago, so I was 68, and he mentioned casually, the way you mention something you don't know has weight, that a woman named Miriam Calloway had passed. He'd seen it in the paper. He knew her only vaguely, as a name he'd heard once or twice from me over the years. He said it between passing the bread and asking about my knee. I nodded. I said something, I don't remember what, and then I excused myself and went to the bathroom and stood at the sink for a long time with the water running. She had never left that city. She had lived her whole life within 2 miles of that house on Weller Street. She had taught school. She had never married, the obituary said, though Thomas didn't read me that part. I found it myself later in the library. I don't know what to do with that information even now. I've carried it for 10 years, and I still don't know its shape exactly, whether it means something about me or something about her, or just something about the way lives go, sideways and quiet and without the explanations we think we deserve. I keep thinking about that evening on the porch. Don't you think this is enough? I've thought about it in the parking lot of the pharmacy. I've thought about it at 3 in the morning when sleep doesn't come the way it used to. I've thought about it sitting in the chair by the window watching the light change on the street. She wasn't asking about that evening. I understand now. She was asking about us, about whether I was going to stay, really stay, in the way she needed someone to stay. She was asking me to tell her she was enough, not the porch, not the sky, not the summer, her. And I said yes, but I was already gone. I'm not telling you this because I want you to feel sorry for me. I'm too old for that, and there's something indecent about asking for sympathy over a wound this old. But I'm telling you because there's something I've never said out loud, not to Patricia, not to my children, not to anyone. Every time I drove past that house, and it was dozens of times over the decades, maybe more, I wasn't looking for her. I was looking for the person I was the last time I was in it. The 25-year-old standing in the hallway that smelled of cedar and old wool. The one who still believed that most things were reversible. The one who hadn't learned what it costs to always be looking toward the next thing. I've spent a lot of years driving past that house, trying to have one more conversation with him. Trying to say, stay,
Just stay. I don't drive as much now. My eyesight isn't what it was, and my daughter has started making quiet suggestions about that, the way children do when they're trying to tell you something they're not ready to say directly. But I went past last month, the pale yellow house, a child's bicycle in the front yard now. Someone with young children lives there, a wreath on the door that hadn't been there the time before. I slowed down. I don't know what I was looking for. At 78, you'd think I'd stop expecting to find it. The step on the left side of the porch, I couldn't tell from the car if it still creaks. I couldn't tell if the second-floor window still stays lit the latest. I sat there for longer than I should have, and then I drove home. There's nothing